Here at Liberty and Finance, we're licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. We are standing by the inventory, ready to make sure you get what you need, even into the wee hours of night and on weekends, because preparedness doesn't stop. Call us 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
And what made you guys go with, I think you have about 10 acres, is that right?
Yes.
Now, with 2 full-time jobs and 10 acres, does that feel like that's doable as far as would you suggest people who are trying to not only work full-time but get into farming as well, start less? I mean, they might get the 10 acres, but start smaller with 5 acres and see how that goes. I mean, what would your suggestion be to people who are getting started?
I think it comes down to, I would want the resources. I would be more looking towards resources than I would be looking towards size. For us, a good chunk of our land is natural, wild, wooded groves of trees. And we have right in the center of the property, we have about a 1 acre pond that is kind of a lowland that collects water from surrounding properties throughout the spring snow melt, and usually stays pretty well filled throughout the summer. We have had moments where it has droughted out quite a bit, but we've always had a water resource available to us. The actual amount of space that we use for gardening is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 acres, but it's split up into different areas. With the main garden area where we've grown corn and pumpkins, we have a kind of a garden that is on the side of that, that is where we built Chaos Garden last year. And we have some other ideas for this year as far as a separate area that's going to be more natural medicinal herb type area. And then we have the greenhouses, the planter box area, and that. So kind of little pockets of different styles of gardening and, trying things different. So as far as the amount of space that you're working with and how you would develop that 10 acres, I think it just comes down to what your resources are for yourselves. I would definitely want to have a lot of resources over space.
The water's nice because then you're not out watering the animals constantly. So it's nice to have the pond because then you're not running around making sure the chickens and the ducks have adequate water. They can just go do it themselves. So it makes it more time effective. So if you are going to work full time, it's a good thing to kind of find land that's going to work with you instead of against you, so you can maximize the time you actually have to spend out there. I wouldn't worry so much about size because, in my opinion, I wish we would have been able to buy 40 acres because I would love to have the space to grow more if I wanted to be completely honest with you. It's also what's not going to overwhelm you. Like if you're looking at it from a starter position and, more space just equates to more work for you, then I would start out smaller. But more space to me is like, okay, I don't care if we don't use part of it and it grows wild, because to be real honest, in the parts that we have left wild, it's amazing the stuff we found in there. I found elderberry plants. We found wild grapes. We have wild raspberries. So it hasn't been like a hindrance to us to not use a certain portion of it.
I think also with that is I would hate to have somebody anticipate buying a property with an understanding of everything they're going to be doing 5 years from now. I don't know if that's plausible from a standpoint of, Sarah mentioned we have natural raspberries on the property. We didn't realize that when we bought it. And we ended up buying a single raspberry plant for $38 the first year, only to discover a month or two later that we probably have more than 10,000 natural raspberry bushes on the property.
Yeah.
So
that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So from a space standpoint, I would say do what you're comfortable with. Make sure that you can find something that actually works for you so you don't have to, spend an entire day out there. But also kind of try to think a little bit ahead and think, are you going to want more space or less space in the future? Personally, I would like more.
I
a personal choice.
I agree. And I think, with that said, I would say half of our gardening practices annually are things that we have learned in the past that work, and half of our gardening practices and the other half of the gardening practices are things that we're trying and probably going to fail doing. But we're going into it with the acceptance that that's going to take place. We've tried so many techniques in the past 5 years and have learned so much from each of them that it just kind of makes it more of a fine-tuned effort, which then will reduce the amount of time needed to be spent towards particular things. I touched on it earlier. Our very first year when we didn't have any equipment other than hand tools, I'm pretty sure Sarah spent every single Saturday and almost every single Sunday with a garden hoe in her hand going up and down the rows of carrots and beans and tomatoes and trying to keep everything as possibly weed-free as we could, for us only to discover years later that rather than fighting the weeds, maybe we can use them to our advantage. Maybe we can look at what can grow naturally that can cover the ground. Then we don't get these 4-foot tall weeds. Instead, we have ground cover weeds, basically blocking that out.
And we probably should point out that we don't use, weed killer or anything.
Yeah.
So that's why weeds are such a
no herbicides,
topic.
No pesticides. Yeah. Everything is 100% natural. We have dabbled quite a bit into a farming practice known as Korean natural farming, where you use basically nature to deal with the problems that come up.
Pests,
dealing with, exactly, whether it be pests or weeds, providing good natural fertilizers to plants that can build ground fungi to increase growth. And there's so much that can be learned from that. And the world of natural farming, I think we're just at the very beginning stages of starting to understand and see what that can do versus basically going as a scorched earth approach that has been done with farming for most of our lives, and probably back to our grandparents, of basically taking the soil, stripping it completely away, and then trying to grow from there, and then continuously spraying chemicals to only isolate and get rid of the things that we are the undesirables.
I was just going to say that takes all the nutrients out of the soil then, because you don't have your selenium, you don't have your chromium, and so then you're having to either take supplements
or suffer deficiencies.
Oh, right, or you suffer deficiencies. So, yeah, building the soil makes sense.
It makes no sense to take the soil, completely strip it of its nutrients, and then have to go purchase nutrients to try to inject that back into the soil. This seems so basic and simple to me. I know that this is very, very hot button type issue with, most of the farming in our country is done in that method, but there are some farmers out there that are ignoring that mentality and proving that cover crop farming, natural farming, and regenerative farming. I know that there's a gentleman in North Dakota named Gabe Brown that has a very successful business, and he is very, very large scale farmer that is doing all of this and proving that it's worthwhile and
doable at scale. It sounds like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's doable at scale. There's a story that's jumping into my head where they have a lot of water. He's up near Bismarck, North Dakota, And he said his neighbor every year who strips his land, when they get this water, his neighbor will have a pond that you can drive a duck boat all the way across. Whereas his soil, because he's doing regenerative farming practices, the water infiltration into his soil is so massive that the soil just soaks all of that water into itself, versus his neighbor where the soil is basically concrete and it's repelling all of the water and can't infiltrate because it's so compact.
Yeah, that same principle was illustrated in the movie The Biggest Little Farm. People should check that out if they haven't. That same thing about when you have highly living soil, it becomes very porous, very much able to absorb and take advantage of that natural incoming of natural water. Joel Salatin, whom we've interviewed from Polyface Farms in Virginia, says people need to rethink their relationship with raindrops. And he goes on to expand on that. Rather than trying to get rid of them as quickly as possible by, ducting them away and trenching them away from your property and all that sort of thing, you should embrace them and figure out how to hold on to them. Right now, you guys have a little bit more water than you wanted though, because we had some record snowfalls up in Minnesota this winter.
Yep, that's true. We do have a little bit more water than we're used to. I think that the main thing that happened here was we went from having knee-deep snow to basically 3 or 4 days later having temperatures in the 70s, 80s, and I believe it even hit 90 degrees here one day. All of our snow melt happened over a 3 to 4 day period. And the result to that was a massive amount of water on our property. I calculated it out that we probably have, in addition to what we normally have with the pond, we probably have more than 1 million extra gallons of water on the property. It will drain out and it will eventually correct itself, but it will take a little bit of time. Probably my estimation is maybe within the next 2 weeks, we'll see everything kind of return back to normal.
The ducks are loving it though.
Yes.
They have little ponds and
our ducks are loving it. And I cannot believe how many natural ducks and geese have come to our little area here. And one thing that I'm very much looking forward to is, as the water recedes, I'm assuming that they will congregate at the pond where we have provided them with many, many duck nesting houses. And so I'm expecting a lot of ducks to be hatched out this spring. And I think the pond's going to be a busy place, not only for our little farm animals, but also for just native animals.
Interesting. Okay. And then I know we touched a little bit on your chaos garden. I really wanted to talk about that because I thought that was so interesting, and how it worked or didn't work. You can probably talk to us about that, as far as, the kind of different experiments as you've been doing with your farm, as some doing the actual rows, and here the chaos garden. You want to explain a little bit about what a chaos garden is?
So Chaos Garden came about through a frustration that we had with pond restoration that was happening. Because of the pond restoration that was taking place, we lost a lot of our natural planting area due to basically a giant pile of dirt. So we ended up ordering all of the seeds for the year and collecting all of the seeds for the year that we had planned to use, with no place to use them. So the kids and I decided one day when Sarah was, I think you were out at the store, to go out and basically have a little bit of fun and just spread out thousands upon thousands of garden seeds into it's not a small area. It's a decent sized area. It's probably 100 feet long by maybe about 40 feet wide. And we planted every single seed we basically had left. I think that we put, I think there was like 4,000 sweet corn seeds and probably 500 pumpkin seeds. And we threw peas and beans and extra herb seeds and sunflower seeds. And Sarah came home, and I kind of told her what the kids and I had done. And she quickly responded with, well, I have a lot of seeds that you didn't know I had. And so she took those out and spread those. And then that introduced us to even more stuff. I think we got dill and tomatoes and squash and kale. And it ended, I don't even know how many different varieties of everything that we put out there. It probably is, 20 maybe different varieties. And as the season went on and things started to grow, we quickly realized that not only was this a really, really cool experiment that we had done here, but one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever seen from a gardening standpoint, to be able to stand out there in front of hundreds of stalks of sweet corn surrounded by green beans and a blanketed ground of pumpkins growing everywhere, and the period, or the having a sunflower poking its head out here and there. It truly was an amazing sight. And I think the local bee population was also very, very pleased with us, because anytime you were out there, you were pretty much surrounded by bumblebees buzzing around and pollinating it.
And one of the nice things about it is when we planted it, we kind of decided we're just going to let it go and not make it be another place where we have to work and weed and deal with stuff. And the way everything was planted, it really didn't have much weeds, because the pumpkins kind of covered the weeds for the corn. And it kind of was like an accidental companion planting, because I never weeded it out there. We never had a weed problem out there. And it grew plenty of fruit and vegetables for us. I mean, we ate corn from it. We ate dill, plenty of beans, lots and lots of beans and peas and the sunflower seeds. And we kind of just left a lot of the seeds out there from the sunflowers. So it'll be interesting to see if anything comes back. I think that other than the planter box garden and the greenhouses, we like I said, we have kind of a big area where we planted a lot of sweet corn and zucchini and cucumbers and pumpkins and that. I think that Chaos Garden outperformed at least the zucchinis and the pumpkins. We had intentionally grown into rows and different things like that. I think that we had counted, I think Chaos Garden gave us over 100 pumpkins. Oh, yeah. It was zero work, literally zero work.
Yeah.
I never weeded in there, and we never even watered it.
Yeah, we didn't do any. The experiment basically was just to see what could naturally happen. Yeah, it never got watered. It never got weeded. It was absolutely beautiful.
Which was surprising, because it was a drought here too.
Wow, that is amazing. And it does kind of make sense that the covers of the zucchini and the pumpkins would maybe drown out the weeds. They're great at that. That's very interesting.
I think that was also, Chaos Garden was one of the funnest things for us to film for YouTube as well, because everywhere you pointed the camera, or everywhere Sarah or I stood, was a different environment. I remember even at one point taking the camera and kind of pushing it through Chaos Garden almost on like a ground level, just because it was so amazing once you started to kind of peel back all of the pumpkin leaves and everything, just to see what was all growing on the ground all around it. It was simply amazing.
It's kind of encouraging then too that people could try to start, if they're going to start small, you could try, and if you don't have a lot of time on your hands,
that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, try something simple. Maybe it'll be a complete fail, but maybe it would actually work.
You definitely had me at no work, no weeding, no watering.
Honestly, I think that you're right in saying that. I'm thinking if we knew what this did at our first house, where we had that very, very, very small front garden, I think this probably would have been a better approach. If you could keep any predation out of it, if you could keep it in the full sun. That's the other nice thing is Chaos Garden enjoyed a lot of sun because of its location where it was on the property. But I do think that it might be a better way of doing things, rather than spending your entire Saturday morning out in your backyard garden dealing with weed problems.
Right.
So speaking about natural, animals would come and steal your crops. My family certainly encountered that with the gardening that we did with either squirrels or rabbits or whatever, stealing the peas or the corn or whatever. How have you guys dealt with that? Or I noticed you have a picture of a absolutely gorgeous dog in here. Does your dog help in any way in that regards? Or how do you keep freeloaders out of your garden if you do?
Well, I will say that the dog does not do much.
They look nice.
They're cute and cuddly, and that's about it.
They're family dogs.
Okay.
There's two theories of thought here. I'm not sure if we're educated enough to understand which should work better. There's either you plant so much in excess that you don't mind the predation that happens and you still have enough left over for yourself, or we've tried different things, doing fencing or surrounding the garden with things. We've also tried maybe keeping the animals a little bit more isolated during the times of the year where the biggest problem is during the planting with the chickens, because they'll scratch the ground and pull every one of those seeds back up out of the ground that you just put in. So we've had a tendency to kind of keep them, like I said, they have an outside run. So we'll kind of keep them in that outside run during that time until things start growing.
As far as wild animals, though, we had a skunk last year do a very small amount of damage. And basically what we did is we just set out live traps and then you catch them and release them. Other than that, I think just with having, the ducks and the chickens and the cats and the dogs running around, I think they leave enough scent since they spend most of the time outside that it kind of keeps most animals away. And one thing we did last year that we did differently from previous years was we planted the whole back field behind the pond with radishes, and that kept the deer back there and out of our corn. We didn't have any deer in the corn last year because they were so distracted with the radishes in the back that they never even got close to anything that we had planted where we actually, wanted it. The radishes we had planted for a whole other purpose, so we didn't mind that they went back there and ate it. But it kept them distracted and out of our pumpkins and out of everything else. And then, like Shane said, we did some fencing, which kept raccoons and things like that out because they weren't going to climb over the fencing that we had. But other than that, we didn't really have any natural predators. We've never had a problem with bunnies. And I'm going to assume that's because our cats tend to kill them.
Well, actually, the interesting thing with the bunnies is on the opposite side of our property from the garden is where we kind of built a little compost area. And what I've noticed is in the evenings, if I'm out, there'll be 3 or 4 bunnies around that compost area. So I think that they're staying away from the garden because we're already providing them with enough of a food source where they don't need to come over to bug it. I think that's also the case, like Sarah said, with the deer not being an issue last year is, we basically built them their own garden so that they would stay out of ours.
Did you have some reason to think that radishes would be a particular draw for them, or was that just a lucky choice?
It was a lucky choice. The point of the radishes was to use them to break up the soil. We went with radishes that tend to go quite deep into the ground. So we're looking to improve the soil for water filtration.
Wow, that's great. Okay. And then I guess the other thing is, your children are involved too. What keeps you and them motivated? Because sometimes kids will go, I just don't feel like doing my chores today, or, what keeps them motivated? And do they, I'm sure there's things they love about it and dislike about it. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
I think for the kids, and I think Sarah probably has better answers on this than I do, but I almost think it's probably the fact that we don't have a chore list for them. They do have a couple of things that they do, but they also don't feel like they're burdened with having to do like a full-time job here on the farm working for mom and dad. Usually their involvement is assisting us in different things so that there's a constant stream of new type chores for them to do, whether it be, today we're gonna move stuff out of the barn and bring it out to the growing area for compost, or egg collecting and different things like that. I think that keeping it different.
I think part of it too is when we moved here, they were pretty little, so their entire life has been this. So this is their normal. They don't, being outside all summer long is just fun for them. It's normal. They weren't raised where they're inside all day playing video games or whatever other kids do. Their whole entire existence has been outside playing in the dirt. I'm not a super big neat freak when it comes to that. So they're the type of kids that are literally roll around in the dirt. So when they're out there playing, it's fun for them. They get to, get their hands dirty, and they actually get to see the cycle of everything. And I think the harvest is probably, I would say, their favorite part. They're the first ones out in the morning without having to be told. And they just like going out there and grabbing something fresh for breakfast. There was one time, my youngest has this little pink shopping cart that her grandmother bought her. And they ran outside in the morning while I was, making breakfast or whatever. And she came back with a full carton. She had gone to the grocery store just filled with beans and cucumbers because that's what she wanted for breakfast.
Oh, that's so cute.
For them, it's like a thing. It's like a giant play area for them. It's not, something that they have to do. It's another fun thing to do. And I think kids naturally, truthfully, want to be around their parents when they're little. And I think if you kind of cultivate that, they'll continue to want to be around you. So when I'm out in the garden, I don't even necessarily ask them to come. They just all of a sudden will appear and be like, hey, Mom, how can I help today? Or what are you working on? Can I water this? Can I do this? And of course, as long as you foster their interest in it, then it'll never become this big, oh man, I have to pull weeds today again. Oh man, I got to shovel up, chicken fertilizer. It's just, oh, okay, Mom and Dad are doing this and they're allowing me to be a part of it. So I'm going to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think that, what I was thinking about while Sarah was explaining there was the property in the summertime is a hectic, very, very busy place, which is, and I'm speaking from a positive standpoint. You could be working in the planter box garden, maybe with one planter box where it'll take you 2 or 3 minutes to pick a couple of weeds out of there. And there's chickens 5 feet to your right. There's ducks waddling down to the pond. Maybe one of the cats came down and is climbing the garden fence right next to you. The dogs are probably somewhere not far away. So having that constant activity around, I think, is what makes it so much fun. It almost becomes, your environment becomes so distracting to what the task is at hand that you're enjoying the task at hand because you're more or less surrounded with a circus. So, and
it's truthfully like a natural playground for them. I mean, if you let kids just run around outside, you'd be amazed at the stuff they do. There was one day this last summer where I was doing something and the kids were running out playing and they were all excited and they had built themselves a swing set in the woods.
Right.
So I went out there and they had found a down tree and they had gotten tools from where Shane keeps his tools, and they had literally found some old swings and made a swing set out of a bent log, and they spent hours back there just swinging on their swings, reading their books and running around playing. And another thing too is my daughter really got into, hey Mom, can I eat this? Can I eat that? So then I spent a lot of time looking at forageable foods that naturally grow in the area. So the kids would kind of go outside and we would look at certain things and we'd look up to make sure they were safe to eat, of course. And as it turned out, we have a lot of really good plants that grow naturally. So when we're out in the garden, they'll be like, oh my gosh, Mom, purslane, can I eat this? And so they're just out there eating wild plants, and it's also a learning experience, and you kind of get to foster their interest. So I think as long as you don't make it a chore, it won't be one. I think it has a lot to do with the attitude you present to them. Kids feed a lot off of just how their parents portray things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's so, yeah, oh gosh, that makes a lot of sense. That's so true. If you look at life as being, if it's the chores are a burden or whatever, your kids are going to go, well, it looks like chores are a burden, So, yeah. When you guys do your vegetable stand, do they also participate in the vegetable stand as well? And then do they get money from it if they're selling, or how do you do that?
They probably run the vegetable stand more than I do as far as keeping things there. I would almost say, if we have one problem with them, they're extremely efficient at knowing what needs to be picked out of the garden and then making the choice to pick it. Right. So sometimes you end up with, we can't eat 70 beets tonight. So yeah, they handle most of that. And, with the vegetable hay wagon that we have, it's not so much it's basically a excess vegetable store donation area.
Yeah.
So, we know we can't eat all of this food. We have a lot of traffic on our road. We would like for our neighbors to enjoy a lot of what we're providing or creating here. So, people can stop on by and pick up that tomato they want for dinner or a couple of ears of corn. And, it's
an on your honor system. Yeah, we don't stand up there all day and
Yep, we're not policing it or watching it.
Nope, there's just a jar with like a donation allotted amount, basically. And people come and go as they please, and we've never had a problem with it. One of the biggest questions I always get asked is, don't people just take whatever in the jar? Because it's not like a lockbox, it's just a mason jar. And I'm like, you'd be surprised how not evil most people are.
Yeah, I think we've had way more generosity from the standpoint of people giving more than people taking in excess. With that said, there has been on occasion a few instances where maybe people are confused as to the fact that we're not a big box chain store that has got a nice variety of all of the tomatoes looking exactly like a carbon copy of one another. And I think what we've learned on that is that while it's nice to meet and greet with people, sometimes it's better to just wave and let them make their choices on their own. So.
Yeah, and then you're not spending your whole day up there either.
Otherwise, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Every person you talk to turns into a half an hour long conversation, which is nice, but you talk to 10 people throughout the day and half your day is gone.
Exactly.
Very wise. It sounds like the Chaos Garden lessons all over again. You do have a lovely sign though, and you've built this hay wagon cart and everything. It's very, very attractive. It's got to gather some interest from passersby.
I would think so. I know that the sign that we have on the front of the property, the way that it was built is that it's basically there's a permanent sign on the top, and then there's a way to hang signs underneath for basically the different vegetables that we currently have on the hay wagon that people can stop and pick up. So we can change those out at whim and have them in any order that we want. And I also tried to design it with the idea that we are going to have storms, and it needs to be able to deal with windy days as well as the calm days and weather and all sorts of things like that. So we really haven't had any issue with the sign at all. And the position that we try to keep the hay wagon out front is not only easily accessible for people pulling into the driveway, but also anybody that drives by should be noticing that it's definitely unique and pick up and understand exactly what it is just with a glance. So.
And I think a lot of people notice it and stop by, and we have our regulars that come every summer and get their certain things they always get, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah, that's very different expectations that people come around to, is that we get all stuck in this modern era thinking we can go 12 months of the year every single week into our grocery store and find exactly our favorites in the exact same places and that sort of thing, rather than there's going to be a seasonality to things, and there's going to be, hey, this is when the zucchini are in, or hey, this is when the tomatoes are in, or whatever. And so your people must learn the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that that's very true, is that, the people that we're surrounded by, neighbors and whatnot, when it comes to those things being available, they're excited to have them, and we're excited to provide them. I have a couple of neighbors that I make sure every single year that I personally hand deliver sweet corn to them, tomatoes, different things like that. Just to say thank you for being wonderful neighbors and tolerating all of our noisy farm animals and children and everybody has. But I think that would be the one unknown key to people that are looking for property is it's very hard to predict your neighbors. We are surrounded by the absolute best neighbors you could ever dream of having.
Yeah, and that kind of brings it back to when you go on vacation and things. Because there was one time we went to my brother's who lives in South Dakota, which is about 5 hours away. And one of the things we did in our coops was we had cameras in there so we could check on them while we're gone. It's just one of those other convenience things. And anyways, we had a storm one of the nights we were gone, and our power went out, which is a problem when you have baby chickens and ducks, which we had at the time, because if they have a heat source, they're gonna die. So one of the things we were fortunate enough is we checked the cameras, they were out, and I was able to send a quick text to one of our neighbors and was like, I know it's storming and I know this is awful, but this is the situation. Is there any way you can come over and reset our breaker? And they were like, yep, of course, on it, got it. They took care of it in the storming, thundering, lightning rain, came over, reset it, so our animals didn't die.
Yeah. Within a minute or two, we had access back to the cameras and power back on.
So that's one of the things about when you do go out, it's nice to have people you can rely on.
Wow.
Right. That's really important. We've found that even neighbors can be like, when we've been looking for properties and stuff, Donegan's really good about, let's get to know the neighbor who's next to us and see if this is going to be a place we want to pre-interview
the potential
one. They
neighbors,
know a lot about the house you're looking at, and maybe there's water running through that you didn't know, which a neighbor said to us, and there's other things that, they really did have to do this certain big thing that they didn't get permitted on the house, and it's like, okay, and then you also get to know, is this a neighbor who I want to be next to? You may not be really close, but at least you still can maybe have a neighbor you can depend on, which is very important in no matter whether you have a farm or just living next to your neighbor. Is this a neighbor I want to live next to? So it's really important to know your neighbors for sure.
We have 3 neighboring properties, and there is not a single one of them that at the drop of a hat would not come running to help.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we've had really bad snowstorms, and one of them came over with their bobcat and took care of the driveway when Shane was gone, so I didn't have to do it. We had another one where I had something had happened to one of my cats and it wasn't doing great, and you can't readily go to a vet on a weekend generally, and they're very expensive. And I was able to message that particular neighbor, and she had grown up on farms, and she walked me through literally how to handle the situation. And then my cat was completely fine due to her help, and she was like on it and really fast, and figured out what medication and where I could get the medication and how to apply the medication. And so it is nice to have really good neighbors, because they really can help you out. And again, we always help them out when we can too.
So needless to say that one thing we've learned in the past 5 years is that we need to keep our neighbors well fed.
Yeah, we don't want them to sell their property.
That's a very important principle. Just as you talked about your pleasant surprise at how God takes care of things in the chaos garden, or how by complementing different crops together, or feeding the wild deer by planting them their own little offering garden off on the side or whatever, that you can kind of work with things rather than fight against them and avoid the scorched earth thing. And you're talking here about collaborating with the people around you and forming those cooperative communities, and even, you wouldn't even call it bartering, you just call it being good neighbors, sharing the bounty with them, and they scratch your back when you need it and when you can't be there or whatever. This is a kind of a thing that is largely lost in our bedroom community, suburban, whatever that we're in this modern world. But it's also pretty disturbing that it's being discouraged officially by like governments that are imposing taxation on everything. Even if you do something good for your neighbor or they do something good for you, it's like, well, what's the tax value of that? And you should report that and pay taxes on it or whatever. A lot of people who watch our channel are very interested in getting back to basics and very interested in kind of reclaiming a more natural, sort of family-centered, life-centered, liberty-centered lifestyle. And it sounds like you guys are crafting that quite diligently together over the years here, and I'm sure that you've answered probably dozens of questions and raised dozens more in the minds of our viewers, and we'd love to be able to follow up with you again as you guys embark on this new season that always brings new surprises, the floodwaters, and who knows what in this coming season. Any final thoughts that you had, Melody, before we let them go?
I would just think, just do tell us how that, since there are going to be people who are interested in watching your videos, which are great little vignettes of, 10 minutes up to almost 20 minutes long, and sometimes 5 minutes. People can take a little break. It's a wonderful, for me, it's relaxing. If my day is really busy, I can go and look at one of your videos and I can see something that's happening that's in nature and natural, and the beauty of the farming, to me, is just so relaxing to watch, and to see the kids involved as well, or just even something that you're working on. I find them extremely relaxing and enjoyable. So just tell us how our people can be able to see these, so that they can also have a place to let down and relax.
Well, yeah, that's so nice to hear. That's wonderful. They're very fun to make and incredibly entertaining, and we've learned a lot from that process as well. Our main spot that we put content is YouTube. At Lohre Farm, all one word. And we have, at this point, hundreds of videos, whether it's from just entertaining videos of animals and gardening to informative and just kind of demonstrating the ways that we do things and things that we've learned over the past 5 years of doing this. So.
I say it's in a lot of how-to, like if you're just starting out, maybe we have some that are like easy things to get started for chickens, or the easiest plants you can grow, just good, startup ideas. So you can at least give it a try.
Right. That's so important. And I love also that you do tell people what has worked, what hasn't. And they're just very enjoyable and easy to listen to and to watch. So
just reminding everybody to go to YouTube/Lohre Farm, LOHREFARM. We're going to put a link to your homepage in the description of this video so people can check that out.
Well, it was great connecting with you guys. This was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday, knowing you guys are busy. We really enjoyed this very much.
We've been speaking with Shane and Sarah Lohre on extreme gardening, farming, homesteading, chaos gardening, dealing with predation and floods and everything else in between, and joyfully sharing with your children.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and for taking the time out of your Saturday with us. We really appreciate that also.
Yes, bless you both and your family.
Oh, you too. Bless you guys. Take care.
You too.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.